Hello and welcome to episode 171 of the Book Binge, another Cormac McCarthy review. This one is a little bit more of a mixed bag, bringing the average to something more akin to average for my total reading of McCarthy. If you've been sticking around on the channel and actually watching all the McCarthy reviews, which surprisingly most of these have gotten a little bit less retention than I've been expecting them to get. That's just kind of the way things go sometimes. You know that I'm not like a huge fan of McCarthy. I've enjoyed a couple of the books a lot, not really liked a couple of the books at all, and then had a couple of the others that were a little bit more middle of the road. But this week, we are covering The Orchard Keeper, his debut release. Like I said, we're back to another mixed bag for this review. At this point, we're a little over halfway through McCarthy's catalog. Some hits, some misses, some pretty okay. This one is definitely one of those pretty okay ones, but that's most of the praise that I can give it. So we're in for a slightly shorter review this time, but let's jump right into it like I normally do with the good. The first thing that I do want to shout out as being pretty great with The Orchard Keeper that I noticed while reading, as opposed to reflecting on it, is that the dialogue in this one was actually pretty good. Character dialogue and interactions was actually really good. It was one of those things that kind of reminded me about All the Pretty Horses in a way, which is another one of those books that he's written that I'm, kind of so-so on, that I feel was a little average. The character interactions, the character work, the dialogue, the sequences of dialogue were the things that I really liked about All the Pretty Horses. That was the standout portion of that book that I enjoyed. Pretty similar thing here. The character stuff is a lot of what I enjoyed in this one. Normally, dialogue and character interaction can be pretty hit or miss for McCarthy for me, so the fact that it worked for me here is great because it was probably the main thing that I enjoyed about the book. For the most part, the story seemed to be a little bit more of a slice of life style type of approach that McCarthy took with this one, not a horribly active story or plot to it, which was fine because the character stuff is what I liked about the book. So I'm just glad to say that the character stuff was enjoyable while experiencing the story, because if the character stuff and the dialogue wasn't very good, then this would be a very boring book indeed. In fact, it might still be a boring book in spite of character interaction being pretty good overall. There were a handful of scenes that really stuck out at the time of reading it. I do remember noting that in my written review of the book, but I confess that I've already forgotten all of those scenes. If you asked me to name a scene that actually happened in this book, I couldn't give you any, because all of the scenes that I come up with either happened in The Crossing, not The Crossing, that's the wrong book, either happened in Cities of the Plain, All of the Pretty Horses, well, it's All the Pretty Horses, not all of, you know what I mean, or Outer Dark. So actually, when I think about this book, I don't actually think of any scenes that happen in this book, which is not exactly the greatest thing to say about it, but I will still say in the good that there were scenes that at the time of reading or at the time of writing my written review of the book really stuck out as being good scenes. I remember there were moments that I enjoyed a lot, even if I don't remember what actually happened in those moments. So, take that praise as you will. Being smushed between my reads of Outer Dark and Child of God did not help this one on that front of memorability, things that happened that I enjoyed and things about the book that I actually remember happening. But the other thing that I do want to give this book praise for is the way that McCarthy goes from modern day story to flashback story. It is pretty intriguing and interesting structurally. It's actually pretty good. Although on audio only, it's actually very unclear when this happens, causing a lot of whiplash. But if you're reading or doing immersive reading, if you're reading via your eyeballs or doing immersive reading, the way that this book is structured is quite interesting as well. But with all of those little points given out to you, let me talk about a little bit more of the bad of The Orchard Keeper. And it really just comes down to the fact that this one mostly dies by its forgettability. It's not horribly memorable. The fact that most of the scenes that I can conjure up from this book aren't actually from this book, are from 3 of the other McCarthy books that I've read, kind of complicates things. It's one of those things kind of like Cities of the Plain. At least with Cities of the Plain, I remember the scenes that should have struck a chord with me. I remember the moments that were that would absolutely devastate me emotionally if I had any emotional connection to this stuff. Whereas this one, I just remember there being scenes that I remembered, or scenes that I enjoyed, but I don't remember the scenes themselves. You know, it's kind of a dichotomy that those two books have with each other. This time, like I said, I just don't remember any of the book, like, at all, except for there being flashbacks. Pretty much the only thing that I remember. Actually, now that I'm, like, thinking about it, no, that's a lie. I was going to say, now I actually remember a little bit of the beginning, but then I realized, no, the first, like, hour of the book that I'm remembering right now from it is not from The Orchard Keeper, that's from Child of God. So again, like, anything that I'm trying to remember from this book, I just don't remember at all. So it's kind of forgettable. Like I said, genuinely, I just remember there being a ton of stuff that, like, I feel like I should have really liked, or things that I did enjoy a decent bit, even if it didn't really affect me the way that I wanted to be affected. I didn't dislike The Orchard Keeper, actually. The bad thing about it is not that I disliked any of it actively, it's that it's the very definition of mid. In fact, other McCarthy people would agree with that. Even other McCarthy fans would agree with that, we'll say. Yeah, I mean, like, as for the ugly, I'll just say, basically reiterate basically everything that I've said about the bad. It's just forgettable. I don't remember anything about the book actively, unfortunately. Also, similar to Outer Dark, Ed Sala, as the narrator for this book, is not a great narrator. This time especially, I don't remember him being very good, because as for the audio experience specifically, so this isn't about the book itself, this is about the audio narration by Ed Sala, all the characters sounded the same, no matter what their accent was supposed to be, or their gender, or whatever else could have been a defining characteristic of their voicing in the story. Every character sounded the same, so that probably affected how I felt about the book. And then also the fact that the narration is even more dead in this one than it is in Outer Dark. It's just not very good. Honestly, the fact that I did this one immersively probably did not help me at all, especially since when I'm doing books immersively, there are portions of it that I do audio only, so the whiplash caused by, like I mentioned earlier in the good, there's some good structural stuff here between flashbacks and stuff like that in the audio is just super unclear. You end up not realizing a flashback's happening until, you know, the flashback's over, basically, and you're like, what did I even just listen to? And, like, that's kind of a problem, actually. So, you know, the narration wasn't very good, unfortunately. The recommendation for this book comes down to, as you might guess, having watched this video up to this point, if you have, I wouldn't recommend this one. It's not because it's a bad book and I would say don't read it. It's just that I wouldn't say to read it. It has some good stuff in it, even if I don't remember what that good stuff was specifically, but even McCarthy fans, like people who, you know, apologize for McCarthy all the time or say he's not written a bad book, would say that this one is one of his worst offerings. Again, the very definition of mid in a lot of regards. So yeah, although I did not hate The Orchard Keeper, I would absolutely not actively recommend it either, because, you know, it's an experience of a few hours to read it that just you don't have to take. If you're gonna take one of these early McCarthy novels to read, one of The Orchard Keeper, Child of God, or Outer Dark, let's just say, don't read The Orchard Keeper, read the other two instead. Unless you're like me and just stubbornly reading all of his books, I wouldn't say that The Orchard Keeper is one that you need to read. That's just kind of how things go sometimes. McCarthy bats at this point now, as of finishing The Orchard Keeper, not including the fact that I've read Child of God since then, McCarthy bats at 2 books being very mixed or average for me, 3 books that I really liked or being good, and then 2 books that I really disliked. And, not counting Child of God or the fact that I also listened to the Sunset Limited, that's what it's called, that I'm going to do reviews for soonish. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say for this video, so thank you for watching. I'm excited to talk about more McCarthy. I'm excited to finish his catalog and, like, actually rate through and, like, do a tier list video or something for all this stuff, and, like, actually figure out which ones I personally think are worth reading, which ones I think you should absolutely skip, and which ones are kind of middle of the road. That one would absolutely be a fun and probably very polarizing video for sure. I'm coming up on the final stretch for McCarthy. I only have a few of his books left. I think I have 4 left to read through that are all new to me, and then 2 rereads that I'm going to try doing. So that is all I have left for McCarthy, and I'm definitely excited for that. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of your face. Thank you for watching this video. If you did, I'll be back in the next one, whatever it may be, which I think is actually an Infinite Jest Diary, the 3rd one of those, if I'm not mistaken, this Thursday. So if you're interested in that, that will be coming out then. Again, thank you for watching. I'll be back in the next video.